The following is a special presentation of 680 CJOB Radio News and Global News Winnipeg. This is Decision 2014. Winnipeg votes on 680 CJOB.
Richard Cloutier with you. We have the two candidates, according to our 680 CJOB and Citrix research poll done along with Global News. The two main candidates. According to the poll, they are in a statistic tie. Judy, Wasylycia-Leis, Brian Bowman, thank you both for joining us this morning. Good morning to you, Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Judy.
Good morning, Richard.
Did either of you bring your resumes with you? You have information?
I did not. No.
Would you like my resume? I could rattle it off.
We'll give you 1 minute, Judy, Wasylycia-Leis. Take 1 minute here and tell us why you want the job of Winnipeg Mayor.
This is a great city, outstanding city, but we have serious problems with the foundations, with a crumbling infrastructure and a terrible culture of secrecy and backroom deals at City Hall. Those are the priorities of Winnipeggers. I have the leadership and the experience to provide the answers to those issues. I also have very solid, well-costed, researched, concrete plans of action to deal with those basic issues so that we can unleash the potential and greatness that Winnipeg can be.
But why do you want the job? Because
it's such a critical time in the history of our city. I cannot stand the thought of leaving a city with crumbling infrastructure to my son. I'm embarrassed by the thought that we have a government that is not up to any kind of decent standards of democracy. So we got to
government? What government are you talking about?
Our city government. Look at the lack of transparency and accountability and openness at City Hall is disgraceful.
So who are you running against? Are you running against Brian Bowman or are you running against Sam Cates?
I'm running for a new beginning for Winnipeg. You know, we're at a tipping point, I believe. And I left my job in Ottawa 4 years ago because I felt it was a serious issue then. And it's gotten a lot worse since then, and I'm more determined than ever to help shape the future of the city that has so much possibility and so much potential.
Brian Bowman, why do you want the job?
Well, I think it's time for the city to move forward with an experienced leader that has a clear vision and a solid plan. I have not been impressed with the work that our politicians have been giving us, and people are looking for a change. They're looking for someone who is looking forward. I don't think now is the time to go back. I don't think now is the time, and what we're hearing on the doorsteps is people want someone with leadership experience, with well-rounded leadership experience, not spent a lifetime on the opposition benches and in partisan politics.
But why do you want the job? I'm hearing a lot of talking points here, but I want to know why you want the job, Brian Bowman.
You know what? I was leading a number of organizations, including the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce and the Winnipeg Art Gallery, and I was a little frustrated by what we were getting in terms of support from City Hall. And I thought, you know what, we can't afford more of the same. And so for me, it's about my kids. It's about building a future for our city that we can all be proud of. This election is not just about pipes and potholes. It's about pride and confidence in our city, and I want to help move it forward.
Same question to the two of you, and then later we'll give you an opportunity to ask each other questions. We'll take your questions on Twitter and on Facebook. But I'd like to know from you, Brian, then Judy. What have you done in your experience, in your resume, that makes you qualified to do the job of mayor? Give me an example of what you have done that makes you prepared to do this job.
Well, I've built a national practice out of nothing. When I started about 14 years ago, I looked ahead at where the economy was going in terms of social media, and I'm now helping families of cyberbullying. I am also have had the opportunity of being a business owner. So I know what it's like to meet a payroll and have to balance the books. And then I've also led the largest business organization in Manitoba, the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. Those experiences have given me a well-rounded leadership roles, and I'm ready to take it to the next level. I don't think that now is the time for on-the-job training in terms of leadership, and I have led organizations. And I challenged Judy during the debates to say, what organizations have you led? Where have you been accountable at the top of an organization? And other than being in Howard Hawley's government back in the 80s when she brought us the payroll tax, she hasn't been leading organizations. And that is a very different thing to do than to just be an opposition critic.
All right. What is, in your experience, Judy, that makes you ready for the job?
Well, first, Richard, let me say that I could take time on air listing all the organizations I've been involved with. And
Take
all the,
one. Take
and all
one
the
experience for us and relate that to us.
It may not be the Chamber of Commerce, but I've been involved as chair of economic development organizations like Sistars in Point Douglas. Been involved with the Red Road Lodge, with North and Stella Community Ministry, with the International Institute of Women's Rights, with many organizations that are at the ground making a big difference. But, you know, being a chair of an organization doesn't a leader make. Leadership comes from experience dealing with governments and working with governments and across party lines. My experience over 25 years has been one of influencing governments, one of being a government, learning how to be a cost-effective government, practicing very serious politics at tough times. It's been about making a difference in people's lives, and I think it's it's the combination of leadership qualities, which I've demonstrated time and time again in all of my work over the last number of years at the community level and in government. And it's also about the experience of knowing government. You know, we've tried a politician in the past without any political experience. Sam Cates, we thought that would be, you know, the best way to go. No political experience, no background in politics, but a good business leader. Where did that get us? I think we're at a critical juncture. We need someone actually who's got some belief in the city and passion for it, but at the same time someone who's experienced to know how to get the job done. And I've got a concrete plan, and I'm ready to take it on and do it beginning on October the 23rd.
So what makes you better qualified than Brian Bowman, than Judy Wasylycia-Leis, and then the same question for Judy afterwards?
Well, you know what
makes you better qualified than her?
Ultimately, that's going to be the choice for Winnipeggers on Wednesday. But what I have done is I've demonstrated. I've been in the trenches building the city. As chair of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, I worked with our provincial government. I worked with the Greg Selinger government to bring a World Trade Center license to Winnipeg, to get Yes Winnipeg up and running. And that's resulted in thousands of jobs. I've led the Winnipeg Art Gallery. I've led the U of M Alumni Association, and most importantly, I've been building bridges between very many leaders in our community. I'm really proud to have the support of Gary and Janice Villman, the Liberal leader of Manitoba, Rana Bakary, people like Wab Canoe, Mark Chipman. These are people that we've been able to bring together and are ready to move forward.
Well, let me tell you, Richard, I think I appreciate Brian's involvement in the community. And he's been a community leader in many ways. But, you know, we need more than simply being chair of different boards. And we need someone who's actually had some real experience in government. So what I bring to the table is someone who, as a minister of the provincial government a number of years ago, initiated the first freedom of information legislation for this province, brought in the Community Places program, which has been so important in terms of neighborhood revitalization. In my federal role as MP, I was a key negotiator with Jack Layton to shape the 2005 federal budget, to actually take some of the resources available and redirect them to the community, Indigenous affairs, housing, environment, and so on. I've been a leader of my caucus. I've had to chair meetings through difficult times. But on top of all of that, I've always worked very close with the community, collaborating and empowering others to be the force of change after some of us politicians have come and gone.
All right, so you both have qualifications.
Right.
You both have a background of different leadership. You have been leaders in different circles. All right, so let's say, Judy, voters trust you on Wednesday to give you a mandate to govern. Mayor has one vote on a council, so you have to be building bridges, you have to be building coalitions, depending on how the vote shakes down on Wednesday. What's the first thing you'd do?
First thing I do is bring together the new council and say we're going to be a team. We're going to work together. They haven't enjoyed that kind of camaraderie over the past number of years. There's been a lot of infighting and blaming.
Okay, a team to do what?
So a team to actually, and I'm going to lay out my platform, and I think it's pretty close to most of the councillors who are running, and to say our two priorities right off the bat are to put in place an accountability program that I've recommended, and I certainly welcome their input, which actually makes sure that every councillor and every civil servant has a code of ethics, code of conduct, and a conflict of interest rules that they live by, and to understand that the City Hall is no one's public or no one's private purse. We're all there for the public good, and no one can influence, can take benefit from City Hall that will benefit them personally or privately.
So you take care of that
one.
first.
And
okay.
number two would be to start the plan for actually improving our infrastructure and taking a bite out of the infrastructure deficit. I've got a $400 million 4-year plan that can start to roll out immediately. And I think every councillor wants to make sure that we do this as soon as possible before things deteriorate to the point of no return.
All right, more questions on that as follow-up. But Brian Bowman, same question to you. Let's say we trust you with our vote on Wednesday. What would you do first?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let Canada know that Winnipeg is open for business, and the old school politics that we've seen there for some years is dead, and it's time to move forward. I've gone further than even the first few days, and I've mapped out my 100-day plan of action that people can visit on our website at bowmanforwinnipeg.ca. But make no mistake about it, there's going to be some heavy lifting. There's going to have to be some changes at City Hall. My key priorities are fixing infrastructure, cleaning up the mess at City Hall in terms of having greater openness and transparency.
All right, so you have a $400 million 4-year plan. Brian, what's your plan for infrastructure?
Well, our plans are they could not be more different. Judy wants to borrow millions and millions of dollars to fulfill her campaign promises. I've said early in the campaign that what I want to do is I want to get greater value for money from the money that is already being collected by Winnipeggers. So I want to free up $40 million through finding 2% inefficiencies. And I'm also prepared to go toe-to-toe with the provincial government, unlike Judy, to fight for our fair share of the PST.
Wow.
All right, so let's leave it there for a moment. We'll take a break on 680 CJOB and come back and talk infrastructure. And you will also have an opportunity to ask a question of each other. I'm 680 CJOB's Richard Cloutier. You are listening to a Winnipeg Votes special on Winnipeg's news and information leader and on globalnews.ca.
This is Decision 2014. Winnipeg Votes on 680 CJOB. Colonial Furniture 2014. Winnipeg Votes on 680 CJOB.
Richard Cloutier with you. Charles Adler back after 11 o'clock. Judy, Wasylycia-Leis, Brian Bowman are the two leading candidates vying for your vote in this Wednesday's vote. Get out and vote, because based on the latest polling done for 680 CJOB and Global News, it is a very tight race between our two main contenders. Very different on infrastructure. $400 million over 4 years. Judy, take a minute to explain your plan.
Well, first let me respond to Brian. We all agree Winnipeg should be open for business. Every business community has said if you want to be ready for economic growth, you got to fix the roads. That's what I want to do. And so I have a $400 million plan over 4 years, which is based on what the city is now doing with our property tax increase, and but expanding on it. It is what Calgary and Edmonton and every major city is doing, which is you use the 2% that I've proposed in my property tax increase to borrow, to use it to finance borrowing, which in fact allows us to take a bigger bite out of the infrastructure deficit. The city now has a plan to do some of that, but I believe you have to do more.
What would that do to our credit rating?
It doesn't. We've checked it all out. I've had all the expert financiers and economists look at it. It would not change our credit rating at all.
Can you name one economist that has looked at your plan and endorsed it?
Well, certainly I've worked very hard with John Loxley, who's a well-known economist in the city, but I've also run this by organizations like the Heavy Construction Association, the Home Builders Association, the engineers. I've talked to every group I can about my plan.
And they've endorsed your plan?
Well, these organizations aren't endorsing anyone, but they all understand the importance of having a plan like that takes a bigger bite out of our infrastructure deficit and does it on an upfront basis, so that you're actually we have to be up and ready to go on October 23rd, and my plan is ready to go.
So based on that plan, would we see a third lane on Kenniston? Would we see a lot more construction here to relieve our traffic problems? Based on your plan, would we start to see this city get kicking and screaming back into the 1990s, let alone what we need to do for 2014?
That's precisely the objective. It's to actually fix the roads between the road to hell from the airport to downtown. Fix add to the major thoroughfares so that we've got we're actually open for business. That we're actually not involved in these very intensive traffic jams.
All right, Brian Bowman, what's your plan?
Well, my plan has a number of planks. One is we got to look at the practices and the procedures that we have at City Hall to get better value for money. The second part of it is the Build Winnipeg Partnership. This is something I announced early in the campaign, and the Build Winnipeg Partnership recognizes the reality. The main reason we've had such dysfunction when it comes to getting our roads fixed is because of political interference. We've had the politicians in the weeds. We've also had ad hoc measures by different levels of government, and we've had a lack of coordination between the investments between roads, public transit, and active transportation. And so what I've proposed is to get some of the relevant parties together, including the province, around the same table so we can start planning better. We need to free up more money. And so getting the 2% efficiencies, which Judy criticized early in the campaign, I don't think there's anything unrealistic about finding 2% inefficiencies within government and putting that directly into roads and fighting for a fair share of the PST increase, something Judy has been challenged throughout the campaign and won't say that she's going to go toe-to-toe with the provincial government to get money that's already being collected by Winnipeggers.
Well, first, Brian, does this mean you're going to stand up and oppose the PSD at the same time that you're calling for a sales tax?
I'm going to fight for Winnipeggers.
So am I, and my record speaks for itself on that front. And let me say, in fact, I'm not prepared to say we're going to cut back without knowing the state of the books, and I'm not prepared to cut into the budget that's going to make it impossible for us to actually clear snow when we need to and improve 311 and respond in the event of frozen pipes. You see, to take 10% a year out of the budget as Brian has proposed.
Sorry, 10%?
I think you said you would take. $10 million.
2%.
I apologize.
2% is $10 million a year.
$10 million out of every year, and that means, in fact, cutting. And he said he wouldn't touch first responders' budgets. That means. You're going to have to cut into the things that matter, whether it's garbage collection, whether it's snow clearing, whether it's improved 311. You're going to have it's going to hurt people in their neighborhood.
All right, Brian Bowman.
First thing we're going to cut is the political perks and severances that you've defended and said it's part of the political system. I mean, giving almost $100,000 to Sam Cates and to people that decide not to run. It's insane, and for you to defend the status quo that way.
Well, first of all,
let's Judy, I gave you a moment. Just let me get my words out here, please.
Go ahead.
We've seen the contrast in philosophy. I don't believe that politicians are entitled to their entitlements, and I think it's obscene to see politicians cashing in the way that they have, and you've defended that. And
actually,
then when we look at finding
Brian,
other
let's set
monies
the record straight on this now.
Well, you said you want to study other provinces.
No, let me set the record straight. First of all, I said I would never accept severance, and you've totally misrepresented me in the public on that issue, and that's dishonest.
That's unfair.
Secondly, I have said, and secondly, I've said that in fact we had an independent City Hall hired an independent person, expert by the name of Mr. Worrier, to look at the whole question of compensation for city councillors. He was there to depoliticize the issue. And you have chosen to politicize it.
No, it's
and in fact, I think it's a question of do we want to encourage people into politics and be a part of this process and treat it as a noble profession, or are we going to say that you're not going to get any kind of you can't collect EI, so therefore you can't collect severance, and you're not going to be able to have any kind of job security.
Brian Bowman, then a break on 680 CJOB. Go ahead, Brian.
The mayor makes $171,000 a year. If you can't figure out to put some money aside for 4 years. When you're serving, so that you've got a buffer to tide you through when you try to get back to the private sector afterwards. I mean, then maybe you're not the person to balance the books and manage the money. I think it's a question of right and wrong. I'm prepared to do that. And for me, people aren't looking for someone defending the status quo and trying to say that they're entitled to the entitlement.
Brian versus Judy on 680 CJOB.
All right, we'll come back to it.
This is Decision 2014. Winnipeg votes on 680. CJOB.
Global news after the break and a news update. Judy has a question for Brian. Brian has a question for Judy. We have more questions for the two leading candidates as we try to figure out who to vote for on Wednesday.
It's Monday, May 14. Winnipeg votes on 680. CJOB.
Richard Cloutier with you. Charles is back after the news at 11 o'clock. And you can weigh in right now on Twitter and on Facebook. With us, the two leading contestants for your vote on Wednesday for Mayor, Judy Wasylycia-Leis, Brian Bowman. Brian Bowman, take a few seconds here, no more than 30, to ask a question of Judy Wasylycia-Leis.
Sure. Well, one of the questions I've been asking throughout the campaign is really whether or not Judy is going to be prepared to fight for Winnipeg in respect of getting matters on behalf of all citizens of Winnipeg in respect of the provincial government and the provincial NDP government. We know that, and we've heard reports that a number of people from the Premier's office are working on her campaign. And I'd like to know if she's going to join the business community in trying to fight the job-killing payroll tax that her government, when she was last in a position of power in the 80s, introduced. I've also challenged you, Judy, on the PST increase of the provincial government and the fact that we're not getting our fair share. And I'd like to get a firm commitment from you that you are going to fight for that.
Well, thanks, Brian. It's interesting that you would talk about you would raise this issue in the context of the provincial government and my political associations when you've got quite a conservative background and not very upfront about it. I've been very upfront about my background and have said that's my past. I'm proud of it, and I will go forward representing all Winnipeggers. You've got Gary Filman supporting you. You just, I think yesterday or the day before, had a meeting with Peter MacKay, the same guy who said to one of the women in the House of Commons when I was there, why don't you go home and do your knitting? So, I think it's time actually to put on the table that we all bring politics and hopefully good politics to the table. I'm proud of my past, but I've also learned over those years how to be a strong, pragmatic politician who stands up for what she believes in. And my whole time in politics has been standing up for Winnipeg and for Manitoba. And as to the PST, Brian, you talk about needing to have some cooperation between levels of government. You would recognize how foolish it would be for any one of us to stand up and make comment on a provincial government or federal government's decision that doesn't have any impact on the city, just as we wouldn't want the province or the federal government to criticize a decision we make as the mayor of the city. I would not want Greg Selinger or Brian Palliser to suddenly stick their nose in my affairs and suggest to me I can't arrange my office this way, I can't put in place an accountability office with an ethics commissioner, and I can't actually charge 2% or 3% in terms of property taxes. Obviously, the people of Manitoba will decide on the PST. There's an election coming up. There's a democratic process in place. What we have to do in this election is stand up for what we believe in and how we're going to actually improve relationships between the city and the province and the federal government.
I think the frustration here, and I will interrupt.
Yeah.
A simple yes or no would do. Do you agree with Greg Selinger's decision, the Premier? And it was his decision to raise the PST. And I think people wanted to simply know. They wanted to know at the chamber debate.
Yeah, I know.
Do you agree with it or not? I think it's a simple yes or no answer.
And as I said then, Richard, and I'll say it again, it would be absolutely foolish of me to take a position on that issue when I'm about to become the mayor of Winnipeg who's going to negotiate with the provincial government. Maybe we should ask Brian Bowman that question because he, in fact, has called for a municipal sales tax. Maybe we should talk about how Brian, in fact, intends to stand up for Winnipeg and Manitoba when he is on the one hand proposes elaborate schemes without a concrete plan of actions to deal with infrastructure.
This is the same old type of politics we've heard for so many years. I mean, it's a simple yes or no answer. And when it comes
I answered it. So now you answer your question on PST.
I didn't hear a yes or no when it comes to will you stand up for Winnipeggers and try to get our fair share of the PST
I said increase. I will do what's right for the city of Winnipeg.
If you
I'm
prepared to stand up.
Are you ready to how are you going to be ready to actually take on the federal and provincial governments in terms of a new deal that Winnipeg needs? If you're going to go in like Sam Cates has done, casting stones and blaming everybody but yourselves, I think it's really time for Winnipeg to get our house in order. And I suggest we do that by actually bringing in place an ethical model of governance.
Brian Bowman, and then Judy, you have a question for Brian.
These are the kind of answers we've heard in all the forums where they're real political speak, and they're not answering the questions. And there has been
what's your answer, Brian?
Hang on.
There's really been a frustration amongst many people, and I think that's why we have momentum right now. People want a leader that's prepared to really represent all of Winnipeg. And I have worked with Greg Selinger, and to start talking about just certain people on the political spectrum who've supported me. For starters, Peter MacKay didn't endorse. I met with the federal justice minister.
I said you met with
and we've
him.
got a lot of other people like Rana Bakari, the Liberal leader, and I'm proud to have the support of someone like Gary.
Do you agree or disagree with the PST being raised from 7 to 8%, Brian Bowman?
No, it should have gone to a referendum. They promised that they wouldn't do that. There was
you
legislation.
Agree or disagree? We'd love a yes or no.
No, I
so you're
do
no,
not. Absolutely
and Judy,
not.
you're maybe simply because you don't want to put yourself on and your assets on the line there.
No, I'm saying I'm not going to comment because as a mayor of Winnipeg,
Okay.
I want to be ready to negotiate with the provincial
fair
government.
enough.
And, I could make a statement on the PST, but and get a great headline, but it's not going to build a kilometer of road. It's not going to fix the pothole. It's not going to
Well, I'm ready to fight for
build a
Winnipeggers, and I'm
single
ready
pipe.
to defend
All right.
Winnipeggers.
Judy, a question for Brian. Go ahead, Judy.
Well, yeah, I think we really need to talk about infrastructure, and we need to talk about the sales tax you're proposing. The biggest issue, one of the biggest issues in this campaign has been about BRT, and I've proposed completing the Southwest Transitway Corridor and then looking at the possibilities for the future. Brian has actually promised to complete and do all rapid transit for the whole city by the year 2030. And you've also floated the idea of a municipal sales tax. So my question, Brian, is are you going to use the sales tax to pay for bus rapid transit?
Well, the short answer is no, because I don't have the power to introduce a municipal sales tax. What I've said during this campaign is that I want to keep taxes as low as possible, but I think that we have a responsibility to talk about how cities are funded, and I'm not afraid to have those discussions. Look, the provincial government has the power to introduce a tax like that. I wouldn't support it unless it looked after low-income, fixed-income renters and factored into cross-border shopping. But at the end of the day, I think we all acknowledge that every election, they seem to be fought on who's raising taxes a little bit and who's freezing them. And you know what? Our roads kind of stay the same. So cities are not funded properly. And I want to bring in some reforms. I want to work with our provincial partners. And so that's what I'm prepared to do. The first thing I would do is convene a meeting and meet with our municipal leaders across Manitoba and the provincial government to find a growth-oriented form of taxation. And that's one option. But I don't have the power as mayor, if I'm elected, to actually introduce that. And you know that, Judy.
1040 on 680 CJOB. Richard Cloutier with you with Bowman and Wasylycia-Leis. The Conference Board of Canada is out this morning with a report showing that Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, and Saskatoon leading economic growth this year. Saskatoon's economy expected to expand by 4.2%. Winnipeg, we're looking at real GDP growth of 2.2% this year, 2.4 or 2.8% next year. Judy Wasylycia-Leis, what policies would you put in place to create economic growth in our city?
Well, obviously the number one priority is to fix the roads and deal with our crumbling infrastructure. You know, Richard, that we're up to a $7.4 billion deficit. Every business group in this city, small and large, has said the number one factor in terms of holding us back on the economic growth front is infrastructure. So my plan is to immediately kickstart that program that I've mentioned already, but to do so in conjunction with the key players, whether it's heavy construction, engineers, builders, architects.
So stimulate the economy through infrastructure, through the taxes that you would add over the next couple of years, fair and reasonable, as you have said,
yes.
And that would stimulate the economy that we then can compete with these other Western cities?
Yes. In fact, all of these cities you've mentioned have been dealing with their infrastructure deficit on a planned, reasoned basis over the last number of years. They've had steady but affordable property tax increases. They've also used what I've recommended, which is to borrow more while interest rates are so low, so that we can actually get ahead of the game as opposed to let it deteriorate to the point of no return.
Brian Bowman.
Look, during this campaign, in some of the debates, Judy's inferred that I'm somehow unqualified because I come from the business community like our current mayor
When
came
did I
from.
say that? I've never suggested
Okay,
that.
I'd like to know what policies you've put in place to create economic growth. Go ahead, Brian.
Is a good thing. There's a number of things that I've done, and I thank you very much for the question. One of the things that I want to do is I want to reduce the business tax burden on our smallest businesses. And I've been fighting for small businesses for years on behalf of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, and I am a business owner, so I know what it's like to meet a payroll. We're going to grow our way out of the infrastructure deficit. We're not going to tax or borrow our way out. We need a robust economic growth strategy, and that's why I talked about reducing the business tax burden on small businesses. Unlike Judy, who wants to freeze the business tax, which means small businesses are going to be paying more. I want to increase the small business tax threshold so that if you're annual rental rate is under $30,000, you're essentially not going to be paying the small business tax. And I'm also prepared to travel to every province in Canada to let them know that Winnipeg is open for business, investment, and growth. I've also talked about Innovation Alley and the creative campus that I'd like to create, because the new jobs, the jobs of the future, they're in the tech sector in addition to the existing, we've got so many other industries, but that's one where I'd like to pay special attention to, because I want to keep young people and I want to get them moving to Winnipeg.
More questions for the candidates as we continue on 680 CJOB.
This is Decision 14. Winnipeg votes on 680 CJOB.
Chocolate.
Decision 2014. Winnipeg votes on 680 CJOB.
Wednesday evening, join us starting at 8 and globalnews.ca, 680cjob.com, on CJOB radio and on Global Television for live, local, and first results as we combine our newsrooms to offer you the best coverage of your vote. Go out and vote on Wednesday and join us beginning at 8 o'clock with Judy Wasylycia-Leis, Brian Bowman. They are the two leading candidates for your vote on Wednesday. Charles is back after the news at 11 o'clock. This is one of those issues that I think touches many Winnipeg families and goes to the type of city we want to see now, 5 years from now, perhaps 20 and 50 years from now. And as parents, we all want the best, perhaps a better life for our children. I know I have 3 children. One's already gone. Probably won't come back. The other 2, one will probably stay. The other one is wavering. And sometimes I wonder if it's an image problem that we have, or is there a real problem when it comes to retaining our youth here, when it comes to fun stuff to do, but a good, well-paying job and a career. Not to say that a mayor can make all the difference in the world, but a mayor can certainly help in that. Brian Bowman, what would you do as mayor to advance the cause of Winnipeg, mindful that we would love our children, to really make it tough to go and want to come back?
It's a great question, and that really is at the heart of why I'm running. My kids are 6 and 4. I look at them, and I look at the state of our city, and I look at the number of people that I have seen move away. Friends, mostly. We've had too many friends move away. I think what people do when they move away, and I went to law school out in Toronto, and I came back, but that doesn't happen for everybody. We need to focus on job creation. We need to focus on building pride in this city, and it starts at the top. People need to believe that their mayor is somebody that reflects their values and is someone that is bringing out the best in the community. And so that's why I've been acting as a bridge builder in my work in the community and during this campaign, and why I've really focused on the new jobs of the future and building the kind of city that really attracts and retains people. For me, I've always thought that the best defense is a good offense, and that's why I want to take it to other cities to start getting people moving here and filling the jobs that we need to have filled. It's all about jobs and opportunity at the end of the day, and that's why I've really taken a strong stance on making it easier for businesses to operate here, and that's why we've got much work ahead. But we need to amp up the cool factor as well in our downtown, because that is a big deal with a lot of young people. They go to other cities, they see the vibrancy of their downtown, and there's a lot of work that we need to do here in Winnipeg in our downtown to make it even better.
So you're going to spend some money on that?
I'm going to spend a lot of time, and we are going to make some investments in downtown. I haven't made some big ticket ones that aren't going to make a difference. I've talked about everything from getting a downtown grocery store and having Yes Winnipeg do its work and assisting them, trying to get a downtown community center through the Forks North Portage partnership, having a seasonal downtown pedestrian mall, those sorts of things.
Judy Wasylycia-Leis.
Well, the first thing we have to do is take away the factors that drive young people away, like our crumbling roads and our dysfunctional city hall. Young people have the answers for how to build a city that is exciting and vibrant and modern, and we need to involve them in the decision-making process. So I've opened up my doors, and actually a number of my platform pieces have come right out of the mouths of young people, like the Our Winnipeg Studio, which allows young urban designers and architects and planners to meet with the private sector and city planners and be, let their ideas blossom. I also know that young people have the ideas for how to make a city that entertains. They know Winnipeg now is the coolest city in Canada. They just want some more opportunities to do that. And finally, I would say in terms of jobs and opportunities, let's make sure that every project the city undertakes in terms of infrastructure includes apprenticeship and training programs, especially for our Aboriginal young people who are feeling disenfranchised and who need to be involved in our economy and who will fill the labor force shortage that we have in Winnipeg.
Okay, a quick follow-up to both of you, beginning with you, Judy.
Yep.
If we elect you and if you get reelected, I'd like to know the Winnipeg, and paint us a picture here of the Winnipeg we would see 8 years from now.
We would see a city that has less potholes, some smooth roads. We would have dealt with our frozen pipes, and we would have actually completed the wastewater treatment plant, so we're not the biggest phosphorus polluter of Lake Winnipeg. We would also have a city hall that is functioning in terms of respect and accountability and transparency and honesty. And it would be a model of governance with young people involved, the Aboriginal people involved, small business giving advice, roadblocks out of the way, and economic growth taking off with an unleashed potential for our great artistic expression and multiculturalism in this province.
Brian Bowman, same question to you. If we vote for you on Wednesday and maybe again 4 years from now, 8 years from now, what would the city look like?
Well, I'd love the opportunity and the challenge and the honor of representing Winnipeggers. I'd like Winnipeggers to look at their city and their city hall with pride and confidence. That, at the end of the day, is really what a leader needs to do. I'd like to have, obviously, as Judy has mentioned, we both want to see a more functional and a city hall that's working. And so we are going to see the most open and transparent municipal government in North America under my watch if I get the chance to serve with greater accountability. We're going to really focus on jobs and the economy. And I'm going to continue the work that I started as chair of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce to really amp up our business sector, because we can't tax our way out of the infrastructure deficit, and we're going to have stronger and safer neighborhoods.
Our remaining moments with the candidates as we continue on 680 CJOB. With Brian, main competitors for your vote in the election this Wednesday. Get out and vote. Judy Wasylycia-Leis, what do you find yourself agreeing with Brian Bowman on?
Well, I think we both share the concern about building a future where our young people will stay. Where I disagree with him is the fact that he's not prepared to come forward with a concrete plan that's costed. Many great ideas that I would have loved to have taken on, like Wi-Fi on buses and like open data and like BRT all across the city, but he hasn't costed them.
What do you agree with and disagree with?
I'll answer the question. I agree with Judy when she says that the young people have the answers to our solutions or the challenges. There's a lot of old problems that require new approaches. And I'm ready for the challenge. And I also, one of the things I do appreciate about Judy during this campaign is her passion for public service. And that's something that I would applaud her decades of service. It is something that should be celebrated and aspired to by more people.
And what do you disagree with her on?
Well, on the approach to business, I want to make this a much more business friendly city, and I want to reduce the tax burden, and she wants to increase the amount that's collected from small business.
Well, that's so, Richard. I got to correct the record on that. Come on, we're talking a business tax. I've said I would freeze. He simply wants to increase the threshold. And he's also been doing a very great disservice to people generally by suggesting that I'm an enemy of business when I've worked so hard and have so much backing from business all over the city, because they know that fixing the city and fixing City Hall is our number one priority.
Proof is in the pudding. I've been a champion for business. I'm from business, and I think business has a lot of the answers to the questions that we've been tasked with as leaders. When it comes to the small business tax rate, you're right. You've said you freeze it, but
yeah, absolutely.
Will you not admit that means that for most businesses, as their annual rental rates go up, that you're going to be collecting more? Because I don't want to collect more from them.
In the context of what we're facing, which is the need to actually find a way to resource our need to deal with the infrastructure deficit. And I think that takes leadership and that takes experience. And I bring to the table an understanding of how government works and how we have to, the minute we get into office on October 23rd, is kickstart this plan.